So this last week we started talking about, well, really talking about repeated tasks that we could improve on. And I was thinking about, well, what's the most repeated task that we do on a daily basis before we can start any project? Well, I think it comes down to our toolbox. You know, whether we have a bag or some sort of container like this. At the start of a job, we take our tools on site. We carry them up the hill or down the stairs or through the house, and we set them down and start getting them out of the toolbox. So really, when it comes down to it, the most repeated task that we go through every single day is taking our toolbox in, setting it down, finding a tool, taking it to work, and then putting that tool back in the box, packing up and leaving. So I got to thinking, how could I change the way I interact with my toolbox? Well, one of the things that I started off by doing was getting those Tanos boxes. And they're not necessarily the perfect solution, but they've worked reasonably well for me so far. But I'm still just organizing a lot of waste. I think that I have extra tools. You know, I make the joke, if I had 10 toolboxes, I still wouldn't have enough space. Well, I don't have 10 toolboxes because I don't need 10 toolboxes. That's what we have things like the van and the trailer for. Vehicles that can carry auxiliary tools that we don't always need, but are good to have around. And that doesn't need to be a part of my personal toolkit that I carry every day onto the job site and I have to sort through and dig around in to find the tools that I need. So with that in mind, I figured the first place I could start, the easy place to start, is my drill box. Because there are a handful of things in there that I use all the time, and a handful of things that I don't really use that much. So let's take a look. So the question is, how much am I really carrying around? Well, I grabbed this kitchen scale, and let's get it to 0 so that we get a nice measurement on here. And I hope this is rated to enough. See if I can balance it. Almost got it. There we go. That looks like about, let's see here. That looks like 15.5 pounds. So 15.5 pounds that I keep in this box. So, what all do I keep in the box? Well, this is my drill box. Keep my impact wrench, and I keep my drill in there. I keep a charger and some bits, drill bits. Let's take a look. So at this point, I have it pretty nicely organized. But remember, the key is not to organize waste, but to remove the waste so that we're left with just the bare essentials, just the most important parts to do the job and do the job well. Well, let's see here. Got my impact, got my drill, got batteries for each of them, got my battery charger, a box of drill bits, box of screws, this block that I guess I used to make a square hole. I got another set of drill bits, those are brad points, got some nut drivers, I got drivers, I got this rust inhibitor. I'm not really sure that it works. It seems like it does. The package says it should, but I'm not sure I believe it yet. I got some miscellaneous lags in here, you know, just in case. You can never have too many GRKs. I've even got this spade bit here. So, let's get this out of the way. Now, looking at all this, these all seem like useful things. I even went to the effort of organizing this box of screws, so that I've got a few different sizes, a few different types, but I've got some washers in here, some ball bearings that I picked up on the floor last week, a bunch of different types of screws with all different types of heads. These are square, these are Torx. So they're organized, sort of, but I've also got a lot of extra in here. And then here's my drill bit box. Ooh, well, I have a countersink to set the heads in, and I've got some drill bits. I guess this one's kind of broken. Now these I bought especially to use with my impact because they fit in the impact with that 1/4-inch hex shank. But the rest of these, well, I guess the rest of these I have to use with my drill, and they don't all fit. They don't all stay in the organizer. It's just kind of messy, kind of junky. Also, this was a cheap set. I paid $5 for it, and it does what I wanted it to, but a cheap set of drill bits is still a cheap set of drill bits. These are my brad points. I really love these things. They make great holes, but I hardly ever use them. I just don't have the call for it. And then, let's see here. I got my box of drivers. Oh man, got a bunch of loose drivers in there. I got every kind of driver I could ever need, but that doesn't look very efficient. And these guys, I'm not sure I really need them in there, but you know, just in case. So the question is, what really belongs and what can I leave out? So let's talk about the bare essentials. First of all, get all this out of the way. What do I really need to have in my drill box? Well, the drill, of course, but maybe not necessarily. You see, I've got this drill and it's pretty good, but I'm not sure I really need it. Most of the time, I find I can do just about everything I need to do with just my impact. And especially with special drill bits and special drivers, I rely on this guy less and less to do the work for me. In fact, even for a spade bit like this, I can pop it right into my impact and I'm good to go. So maybe the first step is to eliminate the drill. I'll save the battery because that's still useful to me. We'll set the drill aside and we'll bring out the impact. So at this point, this seems to be the most important tool that's in this box. I got a battery for it. I've got an extra battery so I can keep one charged at all times and be ready to work. So let's keep those. Well, I need a way to charge those batteries or I'll be dead in the water pretty quick here. So let's put in the battery charger. It's kind of big and bulky, but I need it to use the tool. So we'll save that. Let's see here. Then this block of Ipe. Now, I used it to drill a plumb hole like this, and it helped to line things up, but really I just grabbed it because my square wasn't close by. So if I'm going to use my square, I don't really need this. Let's set that aside. Now my brad points, these I'm hesitant to let go of, but I know I just don't use them much. So with that in mind, the question is, could I still use them if I just have my impact? Well, at this point, they're designed for a chuck, not a 1/4-inch, not a 1/4-inch hex drive. So I really can't use them with the impact, and most of the time I should have pretty easy access to an electric drill that we keep in the work vehicle. So I'll set these aside. Now this bit I use for electrical work. I use it to make holes in studs so I can pull a wire through it. It's been pretty handy. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space and it's sort of special. So I guess we'll keep that in for now. These nut drivers, I can pop those into my impact and use those. So we can hang on to them, and they fill a niche that not any of my other tools really fill. So we'll hang on to those. Now, these lags. These lags are very special case items. Might use them to pull two beams together or to fasten a very large piece of wood, but most of the time they're just going to be taking up space in the toolbox and adding weight to the toolbox. So I think I'm going to have to put these aside too. Just expect that if I might be in a situation where I need them, hope that I can plan ahead to have some of these available. My box of drill bits, I find I don't use these very much. I might pull out the countersink, but I haven't yet. I've used it at home a few times, but never at work. And these other bits, I've used the 1/4 inch here and there. I've used the 5/32 here and there, but it's dull now, so I don't use it anymore. And then these smaller bits that are trapped back here, it's hard to reach them because they're not in their holes because they don't really fit very well. And some of these are broken, like this one. This one snapped right off to the shank. This is useless. This is garbage, or recycling rather. So those are no good. These I bought specifically to use with the impact. And they work pretty well. They're about the right size for drilling a pilot hole for most of the screws I use. So maybe let's just hang on to these, and the rest we can set aside and hope that if a situation arises, I have easy access to some, maybe with the electric drills that I'm expecting to be on the work vehicle. So we can put those aside. And this box of screws, I got all kinds of goodies in here, but I certainly don't need the ball bearings, and I probably don't need screws like this. I probably don't need screws like this. Now, I could keep a few for a special case, like these long trim screws, just in case I need to tack something together. In fact, I used one of these just last week at the stall job. So we can hang on to those, but let's get rid of the washers and the extra square drives. These are junk floor screws that came out of the Senko guns that misfired. So we can get rid of those. And then let's hang on to these. These are the new SPAC screws with the Torx drive. We'll come back to that. So I'll clean this up, and then we'll see what we're left with. And we have my driver set here, which is jammed shut now. So in here, I've got all kinds of bits. Now most of the time I don't need these, and right off the bat I can say that these nut drivers here, well, that niche is filled by this guy, so I don't need these. I don't have any sockets to turn with these socket adapters, so I don't need to be carrying those. Here I've got a bunch of different sizes of Phillips and Torx. They're all large size bits. They're all useful, but I certainly don't need this many of them with me all the time. In fact, maybe to save a bit of weight, instead of using the full-size drivers, I can just use insert bits in an insert adapter and use that exclusively. And these guys, the long ones, these are fairly useful. You know, anytime you need to sink a screw or drive it really far. So maybe I can hang on to those, and maybe I'll hang on to these for general purpose. And in fact, since we're trying to standardize our screws again to the new Torx drive, maybe really the most important is a Torx driver and a square drive for some of the older screws we have, and probably a Phillips for the occasional drywall screw or older screw that we run into. So I'll clean these up and pull out the most important ones, and then we'll see what we're left with. And finally, the rust inhibitor. Now, I can't say whether it's worth anything because I haven't noticed my tools rusting or not rusting, but so far they seem to be staying pretty clean, and it's really just a thin sheet of cardboard. So for the moment, I think I'll leave this in the bottom of the box. So I've dug through my screw box, dug through my drill bit box, and this is what I've come up with. Now, I'm not saying that this is perfect for every situation I'll encounter on the job, but I should be able to cover at least 80 or maybe even 90 or 95% of the problems that I've encountered on a job site, and the rest of it, that gap, can often be filled by a tool that's nearby, whether it's on the van or already on the site, or something that we can plan for, something that we know to bring along. So we have a charger to keep the batteries up. We have a spare battery for when this one runs dry. We have the driver and a battery in the driver. We have this rust inhibitor chip sheet that we'll hang on to for now. I've got a 5/8 spade bit for making holes for electrical work, and just in general making larger holes when my small drill bits don't suffice. I've got this drill bit, 7/64, for pre-drilling for my number 8 screws, and 3/32 for pre-drilling for the smaller trim screws. I've got a T20 Torx drive for our new SPAC screws. I've got a number 2 square drive for our old number 2 square screws. I've got number 2 Phillips for the odd Phillips screw we encounter. And then in my screw box here, I've got a spot for short screws. I've got an empty spot that I haven't decided on a use for yet. Got a spot for 2.5ers. And I've got a spot for just a handful of these long trim screws. Keep a driver with those trim screws, so that's ready to go anytime. And then in here, I've got our standard 2-inch length driver for Phillips and T20 and number 2 square. I've also got a number 3 square and a number 3 Phillips for extra large fasteners. And then in here, I've got a T15 for the odd trim screw in T15. And then this is also my insert bit adapter. So that's locked out. And then I have this set of nut drivers for the odd nut that needs to be driven. And you know, now that I'm looking at it, there's one extra thing. Did you spot it? Well, I've got this one here down at the end, and this is actually a 1/4-inch nut driver. Well, 1/4-inch insert bits, those will also fit in here, but this is really too shallow for the insert bits. So let's lose this one. Put this in instead, because that'll take my insert bits, and it'll also turn a 1/4-inch hex screw, like a zip-in for ductwork. So we can keep that in. That's one thing more saved. Now that we've weeded it down to some of the most bare essentials, let's load it back in the box and see what we got. So I know from past experience that I can put my charger in over here. I can put my driver in over here. Maybe let's actually keep this battery in the charger so that I know that that one's good to go, and I can swap them out and have the charger ready to go. I got a box of screws. I can just put that down there for the moment. Slip this in before I forget about it. And we can put these nut drivers in here. Maybe this drill bit down here. These drill bits. Maybe I do need a case for these. And these guys, we'll just put them in here for now. So it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit emptier. Let's see how it weighs. Okay, now there, I'd say that's just over 10 pounds. That's a change of 5.5 pounds. 5.5 pounds of tools that I don't necessarily need to carry around, that aren't exactly extra, but that really aren't appropriate for 80% of the work that I do, maybe even 90% of the work that I do. So in that sense, I would call it wasted space, wasted weight. Nobody needs to carry extra weight around. The drill box is step one. Maybe next time I can tackle this monstrosity. I think I'll have to save that for next weekend.